Hey, if you're staring at your fantasy lineup today with a losing record, if you're watching your matchup slip away by Wednesday, if you spent all morning asking yourself, what do I even do with this roster? Take a breath. You're in the right place. Because today we're digging into the truth behind week 4, the patterns emerging a month into the season, and the moves that actually matter. This isn't panic. This isn't overreaction. This is where we take control of the week. Welcome to Fantasy Wednesday. Let's be honest. Fantasy basketball can feel personal. You draft like a GM, you set lineups like a coach, you pray like a fan. And then Sunday night hits and your phone tells you the truth. You're either living or you're lying. And somewhere in this league, someone went 0-4 and woke up questioning everything. Someone lost with the highest points of the week and is now staring at their ceiling, wondering, what basketball gods did I offend? And someone else, Pebron, is out here dropping 347 like he's trying to get sponsored by NASA. But listen, this is why we do this show. Fantasy isn't about the wins and losses. It's about the chaos, the breakouts, the busts, the players who save your week, and the players who ruined your Sunday again. So, if you're 4-0, if you're 0-4, or if you're like the rest of us just trying to survive another matchup, pull up a chair. Welcome back to Round Ball Rants. My name is Vincent Cooper, and today we deal with the truth your record won't say out loud. Let's talk about week 4. You know what week 4 taught us? Fantasy basketball has no mercy. None. Not for your pride, not for your roster, and definitely not for your matchups. Let's go ahead and jump in. The league's alpha, Pebron, sits at 4-0. 347 points. 4 straight wins. Pure domination. Pebron isn't just winning. He's dictating the tempo of the entire league. If you're playing him next week, good luck. For real. The challenger, buckets, boards, and dick. Let's talk about us. We walk into week 4, handled business, dropped 270 on Jay Has the Picks, and walked out with the most efficient manager, second best pick efficiency, 3-game winning streak, and we handed Jay the highest points in a loss badge. This wasn't luck. This was precision execution. We're officially the number 1 threat behind Pebron, and that collision course is coming. The Fall of Lamb, 978, 97 points. Worst team of the week, least efficient manager, 2 straight losses. When Sleeper gives your team the broken golden toilet, you start calling every manager in the league like you're running a telethon, looking for a trade, anything to turn that season around. The bloodbath of the week, Jay Has the Picks versus Vincentius, 206 to 270. Jay put up 200 and still walked away with depression. That's the type of loss where you close the app, delete your lineup, and contemplate retirement. But hey, a win's a win. Streaks and slides. Team 3 has 2 straight losses. Team 7 has 3 straight losses. Loose Moose is competitive but inconsistent. And Twins sitting at 3-1 has the lowest points in a win, 166, but still is in the mix. The league's middle class is officially breaking apart. Breakout players of the week. Jalen Johnson scored 52. Jimmy Jaquez scored 49. Nikola Jokic also scored 49, which is light work for Nikola. SGA dropped 46, and DeMar DeRozan with a little bit of turn back time in a 42. These were the matchup records. If you faced any of this group, condolences. The real story. Week 4 wasn't about who scored what, it was about momentum, identity, and who actually has a roster built for the long run. Pebron playing the villain. Vincentius, a rising contender. Lamb is spiraling, Jay has Heartbreak Hotel, and everyone else is left fighting for air. But now, we're looking ahead to Week 5. We've taken the temperature of Week 4. We know where the pressure points are. Now let's shift the spotlight to the players who've stopped being interesting and begun being impactful. Every season has a moment where certain players stop looking like hopeful picks and start looking like problems for your opponents. Guys who weren't supposed to matter this much, this early. Guys who weren't on your radar 4 weeks ago, but are suddenly shaping matchups. These are the players whose numbers aren't flukes anymore. These are your Breakout 5. Dyson Daniels, Chicago Bulls. Dyson Daniels is producing in tangible ways this season. He's averaging approximately 8.9 points, 5.9 rebounds, and 5 assists per game, while shooting about 48.4% from the field. What stands out is how he's contributing across the board, not just scoring, but rebounding, facilitating, defending, all while stepping into a larger role. If you were waiting for confirmation that he's more than potential, this is it. Keontae George, Utah Jazz. George has climbed into a bigger role, and the stats show it. He's averaging about 23 points and 7.1 assists per game this season. Yes, his efficiency still needs refinement, shooting around 42.7% from the field. But the key here is volume and opportunity. He's handling the ball more, making plays, and providing fantasy value that exceeds his draft status. Derek Lively II, Dallas Mavericks. Lively's numbers this season may not jump off the page, but the story behind them does. He's averaging about 4.4 points and 4.6 rebounds per game while shooting at a ridiculously efficient 64.3% from the field. For a young big man getting transition minutes, finishing around the rim, grabbing boards, and protecting the paint, that's exactly the profile of a fantasy breakout if his minutes and role continue to expand. Brandon Podziemski, Golden State Warriors. Podziemski is stepping into more usage, and you can see it in his stat line. 11.5 points, 4.6 rebounds, and 2.9 assists per game this season. He's not dominating yet, but he's doing everything you want from a breakout guard or wing, and that's scoring, rebounding for his size, and creating some offense. The role is growing, and the stats are starting to back it up. And lastly, Peyton Watson, Denver Nuggets. Watson may still be in the early breakout phase, but his role is trending upward, and the numbers suggest that he's on to something. He's averaging 6.4 points and 3.6 rebounds per game this season. Again, the numbers aren't elite, but when you combine role growth, defensive versatility, and minutes in a championship caliber rotation, that's the kind of profile that becomes real fantasy value quickly. These 5 players, they're not just names on a list. They're backed by real stats, emerging roles, and upward trajectories. If you're looking to upgrade a roster or catch a wave before the rest of your league notices, these are the guys to watch. That's the Breakout 5. Let's move into a part of fantasy basketball where you can really separate yourself from your league. Understanding value. Not who played well last night, that's noise. Not who went viral on highlights, that's empty calories. I'm talking about the players whose fantasy value is shifting under the surface, the players you can buy before they rise, and the players you can sell before they fall. This is Market Movers, Week 5. Buy low number 1, Franz Wagner, Orlando Magic. Let's start with a player whose fantasy narrative is way more dramatic than his actual performance, Franz Wagner. People look at Wagner's early scoring swings and immediately assume something is wrong. But if you actually watch Orlando play, you realize his role hasn't changed at all. He's still one of their primary offensive creators, he's still trusted in late clock situations, and he's still logging strong usage within their core sets. The shot hasn't been perfect, sure, but everything else is fully intact. And that's how you buy low in this window. You don't wait for the percentages to normalize, you buy before they do. Wagner is averaging mid-20s in scoring, adding boards, assists, and efficient stretches. When the shooting rhythm catches up, so do the opportunities. This is a player whose value spikes hard. If there's even a hint of frustration from his manager, move in now. Buy low number 2, Jalen Suggs over the Orlando Magic. Another name people sleep on is Jalen Suggs, but for completely different reasons. Suggs' value never lives in just scoring. It's the totality of what he brings. He gives you rebounds from the guard spot, he gives you assists, he gives you defensive stats that win category matchups, and he gives you efficiency that has quietly taken a big leap forward. But fantasy managers still judge him on points per game, and that's where the opportunity lies. When a guard contributes in every category except headline scoring, you can pry him away from someone who undervalues him. Orlando trusts him with real minutes and real responsibility. If his offense heats up even a little bit, his fantasy profile jumps significantly. This is the buy low that sneaks into playoff rosters. Buy low number 3, Trey Mann, Charlotte Hornets. The third buy low this week is Trey Mann, who fits in the exact profile of a player that's one rotation shift away from being a weekly difference maker. Mann has shown flashes of shot creation this season, tight handle, real creation off the dribble, and confidence in isolation, but he hasn't broken through into a consistent production schedule yet. And that's exactly why he's buyable. His fantasy manager only sees the inconsistency. They don't see the minutes trending up. They don't see how Charlotte is experimenting with its lineups. They don't see how Mann fits perfectly into a modern spacing-heavy guard role. You're not buying who he is today. You're buying who he will be the moment the opportunity widens, the moment an injury or a rotation tweak opens the door. If you stash him now, you get the payoff before anyone else even notices the shift. Sell high number 1, Austin Reeves, Los Angeles Lakers. Your first sell high is Austin Reeves, and it's not because he isn't good. He absolutely is. It's because his role is about to shrink, whether he likes it or not. The moment Luka and LeBron fully settle into their rhythm, they will dominate the ball. They will dominate the possessions. They will dominate the creation. And Reeves, as talented as he is, shifts back into spot-up shooting, secondary attacks, and connective tissue offense. That's great basketball, but it's not stable high-end fantasy production. Right now you can trade him while people still see the scoring pops, the shooting percentages, and the temporary touches. But when the stars take over the offense, as they always do, Reeves becomes a much more situational scorer. This is the week to convert that inflated perception into a steadier fantasy piece. And sell high number 2, Norman Powell, the Miami Heat. And then you have Norman Powell, who is the embodiment of hot hand, sell high. Powell gets into these stretches every year, where the shot is falling, the confidence is sky high, and the scoring looks sustainable. But the team context says otherwise. Miami's offense still runs through Bam and Harrow. Powell's role is streak dependent, not foundational. And early in the season, before rotations tighten, these streaks hit harder and inflate his value. You trade him now because this is as high as the perception goes. He's a great scorer, but not a player whose early season fantasy numbers stay at that level. Once Miami is fully healthy and rotation stable again, cash out while his role still looks bigger than what it really is. And that's this week's market movers. 3 players whose fantasy value is below where it should be, and 2 whose value is higher than it will be a month from now. This is where fantasy seasons are won. Buy the foundation before it spikes, and sell the noise before it fades. Play ahead of the standings, not behind them. Every fantasy season has the headlines. The big scorers, the highlight guys, the one everybody fights over. But championships Championships are built on the backs of the players who don't get talked about enough. The glue guys, the minute eaters, the rhythm setters, the ones who quietly keep your weekly lineups alive. Tonight I want to shine a light on the unsung heroes, the players whose real life impact is finally starting to show up in fantasy in a way that matters. Trey Murphy III, New Orleans Pelicans. Trey Murphy is finally playing the kind of basketball people hoped he'd grow into. You're seeing the confidence, the shot making, and the defensive length all blending together in a way that makes him more than just a three-point specialist. Murphy has become one of the players who changes the geometry of the floor just by being out there. And when a guy like that starts adding rebounds, steals, or multiple effort plays, you suddenly have a fantasy asset with more staying power than you realize. And the beauty with Murphy is that he doesn't need 20 shots to matter. He plays clean, efficient basketball, and his impact shows up in categories that other managers forget to track. Whether it's threes, spacing, transition pressure, or simply high energy minutes, he's making himself too valuable to ignore. Danny Avdija, Washington Wizards. Danny Avdija is the definition of a player whose value comes from his versatility. Washington leans on him for everything: defense, rebounding, secondary creation, keeping the ball moving, even occasional scoring bursts. His fantasy lines won't always pop at first glance, but when you zoom out, he's filling multiple categories at once, the kind of reliable contribution that stabilizes your weekly matchups. Avdija is also one of those guys who benefits the most from responsibility, and the Wizard team gives him plenty of it. He's playing grown man minutes, taking on tough assignments, and stepping into a larger role every single week. If you want a fantasy player who doesn't blow hot and cold, who gives you steady, across-the-board value, Avdija is one of the most underrated pieces out there. Then you have Mark Williams, Charlotte Hornets. Mark Williams isn't flashy, but he's consistent, and consistency is gold in fantasy. He rebounds, he protects the rim, he finishes plays, he gives you high percentage shots around the basket without forcing anything. And that's exactly what you want from a center who isn't ever going to be the first option on offense. What makes Williams special is his steadiness. When he's on the floor, the Hornets function better, and that trickles down to fantasy production that holds up over time. There's a comfort in knowing exactly what a player will give you every night, and Williams is one of those few young bigs who plays with that kind of discipline and reliability. Peyton Pritchard, Boston Celtics. Peyton Pritchard is quietly one of the best rhythm guards in the league. Giving him 12 minutes of chaos, he'll turn it into 12 minutes of organization. Give him scoring window, he'll knock down shots. Ask him to handle the tempo, and suddenly the floor looks wider and the offense flows a lot cleaner. Boston trusts him, and that matters. And when a team this good trusts a player this much, the fantasy production eventually reflects it. Pritchard's contributions might not always be loud, but they're the kind that stack. A couple threes here, some assists, a hot shooting night, sneaky rebounds, a low turnover rate. These are the details that win the margins. And lastly, Emmanuel Quickley, Toronto Raptors. Quickley is electric. You feel his presence the moment he checks in. The pace spikes, the spacing shifts, and the defenses start guessing. He's the type of player who can single-handedly flip a quarter with a burst of scoring, and you can't put a price on that in fantasy. Even if his role fluctuates, his impact rarely does. What makes Quickley such an unsung hero is that he thrives in the cracks of the game. He can give you 15 quiet points, or he can erupt and swing a matchup. He plays with an energy that translates directly into fantasy relevance, whether it's scoring, assists, or simply creating chaos that leads to opportunity. He's the ultimate spark plug, and spark plugs win weeks. Those are your unsung heroes, players who won't always trend on social media, but who tilt fantasy matchups in your favor every single week. If you got one of those guys, appreciate what they bring. And if you don't, this is your reminder that fantasy isn't just about the stars. It's about the players who show up and do the small things consistently. Let's keep this rolling. And that brings us to the part of the show where we slow it down a little. Take a breath, zoom out, and look at the bigger picture behind all this grinding that we're doing. Because fantasy is fun, the NBA is fun, but the journey we're on, both for this show and for this channel, is bigger than just numbers. You know, sitting here on a Wednesday night, looking at week 4 behind us and week 5 staring back at us, it hits me how easy it is to get lost in the grind. Fantasy lineups, waiver moves, standing, shifting, injury alerts lighting up your phone, and then on the other side of it, trying to build this show, this channel, this entire thing from the ground up. And if I'm being real for a second, this week had me questioning myself more than usual. Not because we weren't working, but because the results didn't always look like the amount of effort that was going in. Those slow updates, the quiet views, the fear that maybe I'm talking to myself in an empty room, it gets into your head. And I know I'm not the only one who feels that during the fantasy season too. You make the right moves, you set the right lineups, and you think you're in the clear. And then your roster has a bad night, and suddenly you're wondering what you're even doing. But that's exactly why I wanted to end tonight on this note. It's a marathon, not a sprint, not a burst, not a viral moment, a marathon. Fantasy basketball is a 26-week journey. You don't win it in November. You don't lose it on a bad Tuesday lineup. You don't crown a champion off 4 good matchups. And you definitely don't tear down your build because one week felt slow. And honestly, that's the same lesson I'm trying to tattoo on my own brain with this channel. We're a month into the season, a month into daily uploads, a month into experimenting, learning, building, showing up even when the fuel tank's empty. And here's the truth I'm finally starting to make peace with. Just because you're not seeing huge growth yet doesn't mean the work isn't working. Consistency is invisible until it isn't. Showing up every day matters. Having the discipline to record when you're tired matters. Keeping your head straight matters. Not panicking when the numbers dip, that matters. Because the people who keep going when it feels slow are always the ones who's still standing when everyone else burns out. And look, it's Wednesday. We're over the hump. We've got the rest of the week ahead of us. Fantasy matchups that can still flip, a channel that's still growing, a show that we're improving every single day. That's the whole point of the bounce. Not to end on drama, not to end on stress, but to end on momentum. So if the last couple days had you doubting your lineup, doubting your team, doubting your process, hell, doubting yourself, breathe. We're halfway through the week. There's still time. There's always time. If you stay in the marathon mindset, we're building something here. It's not loud yet, but it's real. And we'll be here again tomorrow. Same grind, same focus, same commitment to showing up. And I can't wait to see you here also. My name is Vincent Cooper. This has been Round Ball Rants. And remember, it's not just basketball. It's therapy with a bounce.